Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Joe Toppat. You know, cartoonists often work on different comic strips in their careers. Like Jim Davis not only did Garfield, but he also had Norm Nat and U.S. Acres. Mort Walker worked on Beetle Bailey, Boner's Ark. Not that kind of Boner. High and Lois, and a whole bunch of others. Charles Schulz was no exception to this. He began working on Peanuts in 1950, but it wasn't the only comic he worked on. Peanuts was not a household name back in the 50s as it is today, so he was able to work on a different comic. And that comic is It's Only a Game. It was started on November 3rd, 1957, and it ran 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And they also had a compilation on Sundays. And I'm really excited about this, folks, because this comic is from the legendary Charles Schulz, who I absolutely love. He was the greatest cartoonist to ever live, and that is not up for debate. So, if you pardon me for a second, folks, I am going to read this comic. It has to be as awesome as Peanuts is. What did I just read? How could Charles Schulz, the creator of the greatest comic strip of all time, create this? Allow me to explain a few things. The whole premise of It's Only a Game is that people playing games. That's pretty much the best I can describe it. There really are no main characters. It's just people who kind of look like the Peanuts characters playing these games like bridge or golf or table tennis or ping pong, whatever. That's pretty much it. It's just, let's go play golf or something. Oh, and tell a silly little joke. Peanuts was so much more than that. Yeah, they did have sports humor too, but it also was a strip about loneliness, feeling like a loser, having flights of fantasy. There was a lot of great characters to remember too. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Woodstock, Linus Lucy, Peppermint Patty, Marcy, and so many others. And It's Only a Game just had nobody. Another big difference between Peanuts and It's Only a Game is the fact that Schulz did not work on it alone. Yeah. Peanuts was drawn exclusively by Schulz. Nobody else touched it. At least not the comic strip. You see, back in the 50s and even into the early 60s, there was a series of comic books drawn for Dell. Schulz drew a little of the comics, but with the comic strip, he had no time to do it on a regular basis. So, in comes the closest Schulz ever had to an assistant, Jim Sasseville. Like Charles Schulz, Jim Sasseville came from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he also worked as an instructor for the Art Correspondence School, where he met Charles Schulz. When he needed an artist to work on the comic books, Jim Sasseville filled the role because his style was so close to Charles Schulz's. Since he needed help, obviously, on It's Only a Game, that's where Sasseville came in. Now, Schulz did do the sketches and the gags himself, but Sasseville would complete the sketches, polish them up for publication. And this would go on for roughly a year and a half. The two had a similar sense of humor, and they both loved playing bridge. Well, sadly, the comic just didn't last. On January 11th, 1959, Schulz decided to put an end to the comic. An interesting fact about It's Only a Game is that, well, it actually was more successful at launch than Peanuts was. Yeah, believe it or not, it was. When Peanuts first premiered on October 2nd, 1950, it was only featured in 7 papers, whereas It's Only a Game was featured in close to 30. And that's very impressive, but the number didn't grow that much, if at all, when it ended on January 11th, 1959. It's Only a Game was nothing special. Yeah, it's kind of neat seeing a different comic worked on by Charles Schulz. And I find it kind of amusing that some of the characters look like the Peanuts characters. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend this book to anybody outside of collectors like myself. Well, I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later.